Tonight I saw Twisters, plural, the, I guess, sequel, I don't know, redo, whatever the word is, for the original movie Twister. So as a kid, I liked Twister. I think. Mom, Dad, you can correct me if I was terrified of it as a kid. I remember enjoying it though. I thought it was a cool movie. We all watched it at home, and I think we had a VHS tape of it. Anyway, so saw it tonight. Theater was pretty full. I think the movie's only been out for a week, so that makes sense. There were also a ton of people going to see Deadpool and Wolverine reviewing coming for that. Okay, so I liked the movie. It's about 2 hours long, good runtime, good pacing, so it was an enjoyable watch. I thought that the overall plot was pretty good. Did I watch Twister before I saw Twisters to remind myself what that movie was about? No. Not that I didn't want to, I just truly forgot and didn't feel like it. Okay, so if I remember correctly, the original plot of Twister was like storm chasers, and they were trying to understand how tornadoes worked, which is why they had the Dorothy thing. And so this one, instead of trying to understand tornadoes, they still are trying to understand tornadoes. They're trying to stop tornadoes, which I think is a really cool premise, because it's like, well, we want to help people. And yeah, that makes sense. So that was like a good plot. And, the acting was good. I don't think anyone really goes to watch these movies because they're like, did you hear the acting in Twisters is incredible? No, they don't do that. They're like, oh my gosh, I heard that a tornado gets set on fire, and that's why you watch it. Also because Glenn Powell is hot. Which, yeah, that's why people go to see it. Okay, so overall, I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was entertaining, and I don't know, I feel like that's all that you need to say for a review, right? Go see it if you want. If you're afraid of like death and watching violence, it's not like yeah, there's death and stuff, but it's not like a gore film, people die, but they don't like show it in super graphic detail. So you're fine there. Okay, now we're gonna do the summary. And I'm gonna do a good job this time. I'm not gonna do a good job. Also, no laundry behind me. Mom, I know you're thinking, wow, Kaylee, she folded her laundry and put it away. No, I did not. I shoved it in my closet. It is not folded. Maybe I'll fold it later tonight. Okay, so the movie starts with Kate. I think the actress's name is Daisy Edgar Jones. She's like with her 4 friends, one of whom is Anthony Ramos, and then Kiernan Shipka and 2 other guys. And they're like young kids, maybe college aged, who are interested in taming tornadoes, because Kate's like, if we add sodium polyacrylate, which is a highly absorbent material, we can stop a tornado in its tracks. And so they're going and they're chasing this tornado, and Anthony Ramos, he's collecting the data, he stays behind, and then the 4 of them are like trying to chase this tornado, but it's too powerful. It's way more powerful than they thought it would be. So basically they all have to like take cover at an overpass, which is the worst place to take cover, but it was the only place. And then basically all 3 of her friends die. Sorry, that was a spoiler. One of whom was her boyfriend. How did I know he was gonna die? Because in the trailer for the movie, they show Glenn Powell walking through the rain in a white t-shirt wearing a cowboy hat. So obviously the main female lead cannot have a boyfriend if Glenn Powell is going to be walking around in a wet t-shirt. Let's be real, folks. Okay, so now that the boyfriend's dead, sorry, it's like 5 years later, and Kate's all traumatized, so she like moved to New York. She's out of Oklahoma, and she's like still working in weather. And then Anthony Ramos, whose name is Javi, he comes to visit her, and he's like, hey, I'm starting a new company, and we're collecting data on tornadoes, and there's a really big tornado outbreak, and I need your help to like chase the tornadoes because you have that instinct. And she does. So they go to Oklahoma and they're chasing tornadoes, but then Glenn Powell shows up, and he's a YouTuber and a bad boy, and he rides in a big truck, like a really big truck, and he's got all this like fancy gear. Well, not super fancy. He's got fireworks, and he's like got this big crowd of admirers around him at this like pit stop that they're at, and he sees Kate, and Kate's like staring down at her iPad tracking the weather, and he ignores all of his fans, and he goes and walks over to her because she's alone. She's a loner, and she's looking not at him. How could she? He's intrigued because she is an intriguing girl. Okay, So he like goes over and is like bantering with her, and she's bantering back, and he's like, well, which way are you heading? And she's like, I'm heading east because the one to the west is gonna peter out, but the east is gonna give a real good show. And he's like, okay, then we'll go east. And then she gets in her car and she heads west because she lied to him to, you know, get him off her track or whatever. So he follows her, obviously, and is being obnoxious about, you know, riding the tornado. And they try to get their data, but, you know, Kate freaks out because she's like, oh my gosh, it's a tornado. Which, to be fair, Anthony Ramos, I need to call them by their actual names. Javi was with Kate the day that their 3 friends died in a tornado. And then he's talking to Kate, and he's like, Kate, can you just help us? You don't have to go to the eye of the storm. And then he puts her in the car that is going to the most dangerous part, because his crew is trying to get like a 3D view of a tornado. Sorry, now I'm getting angry because I realize this. So his crew is getting a 3D model of the tornado. So they need, you know, one person on, you know, 3 sides or whatever. And so it's like one person in the back, one person on the side, and then one person in front of the tornado. And you would be like, wow, maybe they should put her in the car in the back, the least dangerous spot, because she's, you know, traumatized. But no, he's like, we're going to put you in front of the tornado. So she freaks out and they don't get their data because she can't set up the thing. And he's like, Kate, and he's actually kind of understanding about it. And it was fine, but it's like, Javi, have some common sense. Dear God. And so Glenn Powell, his name's Tyler, his crew he's got like just a bunch of YouTuber friends, and they just shoot fireworks into tornadoes, which feels like not an okay thing to do. Regardless, he also has a British journalist with him who spends the entire movie shitting his pants because he's afraid of tornadoes. Okay, so that happens, and then, I don't know, the rest of the movie is them continuously chasing tornadoes, and everyone's like, well, all of the data and all of the science shows that it's going to be this storm over here that becomes the big tornado. And then Kate goes, no, it's going to be that little one. And then they follow the little one, and of course it is the big tornado. And that happens like 3 more times. And then at one point, like, a town gets hurt, and Kate's like helping the people in the town, and then she sees that Tyler and his crew are like giving out free food and water and helping people find their dogs, and she's like, wait, they're not like soulless people. And it's like, of course they're not. It's Glenn Powell. He can afford to not be the villain right now, like in his acting gig. He can't play a villain, he's too hot for that. Okay, so she's like, wait, maybe they have souls. And then Javi is like doing his business thing for Stormpar, and he like, every single time that he's talking to his investor, he always like finds a reason for Kate to not be there. So obviously his investor is profiting off of people's tragedies. So then at one point, Kate and Javi get in a fight, and she's like, well, I'm not going to help you profit off of people's tragedies. And he's like, yeah, I don't blame you. And but then she like steals his car and goes to her mom's house, and I'm pretty sure her mom was one of the people in the original Twister movie. And then like Tyler finds her, and he sees her research about stopping a tornado, and he's like, well, maybe we can do it. And they do a model, and it kind of works. So Tyler and Kate go and they try to stop a tornado, but it doesn't work. And then they go to Javi because he has the 3D data that he got from his fancy stuff, and they make him give it to them. And they're like, oh wait, we need to add other stuff. So they do more sciencey stuff. And then there's a big ass tornado, and it goes towards a town. So Kate and Tyler go to save the people, and then Javi is with his business partner, and his business partner's like, I don't care about the people, we need to get this data. And Javi abandons his business partner to go help. It's very cute, very sweet. I'm happy that Javi had a heart. And then like everyone in the town is about to die, and Kate chooses to go into the eye of the storm to do her science experiment and ends up saving the day. And then the movie ends with them being like, okay, Kate, we need more money for research so we can prove that this actually works and start implementing it. And she's at the airport, and Tyler's there, and Tyler has a slogan where he's like, if you feel it, chase it. And he's like, so what are we gonna do about this? And she's like, if you feel it, chase it. And then she goes into the airport, and then he follows her, and it's a whole thing. Okay, so that's the review. I got kind of sick of it because then I realized how much of the movie is just them chasing a tornado and then the tornado wreaking havoc. Okay, that's the whole plot. Stop watching if you don't want to hear me talk about science. I do not blame you. Okay, so here's my absolutely unqualified scientific critique that's also kind of qualified. Okay, so the stuff that they were putting into the tornadoes was sodium polyacrylate, which is just the stuff that's put in diapers. I've worked with it before. Um, it's just a super absorbent material, and it has the texture of sand, right? And so their thought process was that they would put it into a tornado and it would absorb the moisture and then cause like a cold front that would just stop fueling the tornado. And then halfway through the movie, this is where I lost their train of thought. Is they said like, it's so confusing because they said it too quickly and then they didn't repeat it. They basically said that in the model they weren't accounting for the moisture and the humidity and they were only relying on air. But then they were like, so we need to make more rain. Like they were saying like, oh, it's absorbing the rain but not the humidity. So it made it sound like they needed to factor in the humidity, but then they made it seem like the humidity was not important and it was really just the rain. So their idea is to cloud seed, which is where you put silver iodide into the atmosphere and you basically generate a rain cloud, and then all of the sodium polyacrylate would soak up the water that is produced by the silver iodide and stop the tornado. Okay, so like theoretically that probably works. But there is not enough evidence to prove that cloud seeding works. I mean, I like the idea of using silver iodide to start a rainstorm. Like people have tried it and it's not 100% on if that can work consistently. And in a case like this, you would want to know that it works consistently. And also a tornado is like kind of a crazy weather condition. So maybe don't risk it. But okay, beyond that, I'm confused by why they think adding sodium polyacrylate would actually solve the problem. Because like, yes, sodium polyacrylate is really absorbent, but it's like the texture of sand. So you have these like tiny little pellets, right? The size of sand, and they absorb water. But even when sodium polyacrylate has absorbed water, it still falls apart pretty quickly. If you hold it in your hand and you go like this, it's going to crumble. And maybe they're thinking like, oh, if it's raining, all of it will like come together and stick and it'll be heavy enough that it'll stop the flow. It doesn't make sense. With the speed of a tornado, it's not like the water is going to drop out of the sky, right? Like it's not like being absorbed by the sodium polyacrylate is going to make all this moisture like drop. It's just going to be, I feel like at that point you would just have sodium polyacrylate flying around in the wind. They also specify that it's non-toxic, so it's like an environmentally friendly solution, but like that's just going to be sitting in fields and then you're going to need to clean that up because at some point you're going to have tons and tons, like not metaphorical tons, literal tons of like sodium polyacrylate in your wheat fields, and I feel like farmers wouldn't be happy with that whole thing. So like that part of the science doesn't make sense to me. If you found a like absorbent material that absorbed water and stuck together, then it would make more sense to me. But like the idea of the sodium polyacrylate like catching the water and stopping the tornado isn't quite holding in my head. Like it's just not making sense because I don't think it would make a difference. I really think it would still be water. You would just have a ton of powder mixed in with it. That's not really making a difference. Okay. Besides that, even if this idea was proven to be correct, that would mean that the government would have to implement like a tornado taming program. And I do not think the government would ever go for that because you would really, the only way that the solution works is if you have people in the eye of the storm releasing firecrackers of silver iodide and then literal tons of sodium polyacrylate. So I think sodium polyacrylate is relatively cheap. I think it is. Don't quote me on that though. But like, first of all, governments never want to pay for money for anything. And it's way too dangerous of like a process that they would never risk people dying to stop the tornado. So like, at the end of the day, it's, in my opinion, kind of a fruitless experiment. Like, there's no point in experimenting with that because the solution is too dangerous. You need to find a way to maybe have like stations where you could release the chemicals, you know, like 1 per square mile, and then you could like remotely release the chemicals if you see the tornado is in that area. But like, that's not gonna happen. Like, nobody's gonna install those and have them just sitting there taking up space. So I appreciate the idea, but like, it just wouldn't work. No one would ever buy that. Yeah. So anyway, that was my completely unqualified scientific take on the science behind Twisters. The only thing I'm good at is critiquing science. It's my favorite thing to do. I love to do it. I love when movies try to be scientific, but this one was like, okay. It was like, okay, but even if the sodium polyalkylate worked, you're not gonna have anyone volunteering to go out in the storm. I mean, you would, because the main characters do, but like, overall, it doesn't make sense. So I would not fund that research if I were a company. If I were a person, I'd fund the research because I'd be like, hey, anything to stop a tornado, that sounds pretty cool. But like, I don't think any company would actually fund that research. But you never know. So anyway, love you guys. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Also, Dad, I'm gonna make you watch this video. There's a scene in the movie where they're like driving and through like a windmill field, and there are all these windmill blades crashing down to the ground. Can you let me know the structural stability of windmills and how well they fare in tornadoes? I feel like part of your job is knowing that. Would the blades actually come off of the windmills? And are cities aware of that? And do they have plans to stop that from happening? Okay, cool. That's all. Have fun biking in Iowa, Dad. Bye.